Welcome back, everybody, to the You Ask Me podcast, the show where you ask the questions, they answer them, and I'm just the guy in the middle. And this week we have a really cool episode. He's a graduate student completing a master's in international affairs, and he also runs the EndJewHatred Campus Fellowship, where he's a campus coordinator. I want to give a warm welcome to my good friend, Yehuda Jian. Yehuda, how's it going?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Ed. How are you?
Thank God, can't complain. So, the first question always comes from me, and that's what's
Sure.
new. What's going on?
Okay. Well, I finished my degree in December, in between semesters right now. Just finishing out my second year with EndJewHatred. Uh, Personal life going really well too. Dating a girl I'm really excited about, as I've told you.
Yeah, it's true.
Um, yeah.
Wait, no.
Oh, today's my mom's birthday.
Happy birthday to your mom. Great. Um, yeah, so let's get into some of these questions. The first one that comes up, it's like, fighting anti-Semitism these days could get pretty tiring. So, this first question is asking, how do you stay motivated to continue?
That's a good question. And I've been fighting anti-Semitism for longer than just when I've been with NGO Hatred. I was doing it on campus at UC Santa Barbara as well when I was an undergrad. And I got a lot of the same questions back then. So honestly, sometimes I'm not so motivated. Sometimes it's really hard to like keep doing the same exact thing day in, day out, hear the same horrible stories, and sometimes you need to take a break. So it's important to take a break when you need one. Um, for anybody out there who's like me, it might feel like you're like abandoning your post or something like that, or that you could help out, so you should, but it's important to take care of yourself. It's important to take a break when you need one.
Mhm.
And on top of that, there's a big feeling of if I don't do it, who will? And yeah, there's lots of activists out there, and there's lots of these different organizations and Jew Hatred, ICC, Stand With Us, Hillel, Chabad, all these other campus organizations and other organizations that deal with anti-Semitism in different ways. But every person has their own relationship with their Judaism and with the anti-Semitism around it. And so no one will be able to have the individual effect that you do. And so no matter what you're surrounded by, I find it helpful to keep in mind that if I don't do it, then there's going to be some piece missing that only I can bring to the table.
Mhm. Yeah, I fully agree too, but I feel like sometimes I don't have really the motivation to post something on my Instagram, for example, like
Right.
how the templates come out um
Yeah.
and things like that. And it's like sometimes I don't really have the motivation to post on Instagram because I'm just like, it's like I'm kind of preaching to the choir because I'd say a huge majority of my following on my personal account is Jewish. So it's kind of preaching to the choir anytime I do
Right.
that. But I feel like I'd argue sometimes just existing is kind of fighting anti-Semitism. Like, what do you think about that?
It can definitely feel like that sometimes. And I understand not wanting to make an Instagram post, especially if most of your followers already agree with you. But it's not always necessarily about an Instagram post. Maybe it's going to a rally. Maybe it's bringing a speaker to your shul or to your campus. And there's lots of organizations, including Andrew Hatred, that would love to help you do that. Maybe there's lots of ways to get involved, school board meetings, PTAs, etc. And yeah, I mean, sometimes, especially since October 7th, it does kind of feel like existing as a visible Jew is automatically fighting anti-Semitism, and it shouldn't be that way, but sometimes it is. I confess I'm a little jaded about these things
Mhm.
because I've been in it so long and I've seen so many different versions of anti-Semitism. I've developed kind of a thicker skin. And so like, we all, as Jews, we all have our anti-Semitism radar. And
Mhm.
then sometimes you see a joke on Instagram and you've been pissed off lately and you're like, is this anti-Semitic or am I just super sensitive right now? Yeah. So listen, I'm not going to tell other people how to decide what their Judaism means to them and what's anti-Semitic um, in their individual lives, because there are things that are on the border and there are things that people can disagree on. But I think it's important to remember that it's not about fighting necessarily just fighting the hatred. It's about being proud of who you are as a Jew.
Mhm.
And whether you're religious or not, or like whatever your relationship is with Judaism, whether you had one parent who was Jewish or whether you're Hasidish or anything in between, um, it's important to know that fighting anti-Semitism is not about fighting anti-Semitism. It's about being proud to be a Jew. Because if you deal with the negativity all day long and you don't inject any positive reinforcement of that you are a Jew and that you're proud to be a Jew, then yeah, it'll feel like you're constantly under fire. It's going to be really hard to be motivated. So it's important to keep that pride going.
100%. And it's super important too. I actually remember there was one story one time. It was actually a few months ago. It's like I was working at the DA, right? And basically the way it worked with the DA is parking is not cheap in that area. So what I would do is I would park at my school, like on my school like parking lot, and then take the
Sure.
train there to the DA and back whenever I finished work. So I finished work that day. I came back off the train, got off the train, was walking like toward like my school campus, and some random guy on the street started yelling like, "Yo, you Jewish? Are you Jewish?" And like literally chased me to like my campus. I had to run back, get into my
Damn.
car, and drive off. And as much as I made the safe decision that day, I was kind of pissed off that it was just like, wow, I really got punked. Like, because it's like, I mean, it's like I
Yeah, I get it.
felt,
It's easy to feel like that.
yeah, it's like I felt like ashamed, borderline. And then fast forward to a few weeks ago, I was in New York for a week, and one day I was just like walking around, and this one guy like he didn't like stop me, but it's like this one random person on the street was just like, "Are you Jewish?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Are you proud to be Jewish?" I said, "Yeah." It was like, "Good. If you didn't, I'd have to bust your ass." I was like, "Oh, okay, all
He's
right, great."
right.
But but that time, thank God I didn't back down. It's like it comes with time. It's like we have to, as long as we're proud, it's like they can't really do anything against us.
Yeah. And but I also want to say that
We're
if
responsible.
you're acting in the interest of your like physical safety, then there's nothing to be ashamed of. I am not in favor of getting injured or killed to make a point. Like some people will tell you that that's what we need to do. I disagree with them. They can do that if they want. That's not why we're here. So if you genuinely feel physical danger, or if somebody is heckling you from the street, but they look like they might actually try to start something with you, and you feel in that situation that the best thing for your physical health is to get out of there, get out of there.
Mhm.
I'm not advocating violence here.
Yeah, no, stay safe, everybody. You brought up October 7th before, and I feel like especially these days, fighting anti-Semitism is kind of impossible not to bring October 7th up. Um, so I mean, there's been a significant increase of anti-Semitic incidents since then. Um, so what are some concerning trends that you saw in the past 8 months?
Um, so I've heard a lot of people talk about how anti-Semitism is getting worse since October 7th. And having worked in the field for a while and having gone to a campus that was pretty loud with its anti-Semitism, we had two BDS resolutions. We had an apartheid wall just in my 4 years there. Actually, UCSB just passed BDS for the first time ever last week, which was it was the last UC to pass it. First time they brought it was in 2014, and they brought it almost every year since. So for 10 years, the Jewish community fought off BDS, and now they passed it. But I guess the trends I'm seeing is I wouldn't call it wars. I would call it more often more visible and most importantly, um, more accepted. It used to be that if a girl gets grabbed by the throat, like somebody did at Berkeley, that triggered an immediate police investigation. This did not. Used to be that if a girl gets stabbed in the eye with a flag, like at Yale, it triggers an immediate response, not just from the school, legally. That did not happen. At the same time, though, my freshman year of college, this was, what are we talking, 6 years ago? Okay. Um, it was the week before a BDS resolution was supposed to be on the table. And one of my friends happened to have an Israeli flag up inside of his house. It was on the second floor. He shared the house with like, I don't know, five other guys. His room was on the second floor. He had an Israeli flag in his room, and you could see it like if you had the right angle, you could see it from the street if his curtains were open. Somebody took a brick and threw it through his window while he was standing there. Guy had to get glass pulled out of his face. This was 6 years ago. This was pre-October 7th. This was pre-COVID. So I don't know that it's worse. I think it's more often. I think it's more visible, and I think it's more accepted. But I don't like the term worse because we've been seeing this stuff for years, if not decades, and unfortunately, only recently have people started to notice.
100%. And it's also like, I mean, I feel like since way be before October 7th, there was kind of a yearly trend where it's like at least a few times a year, some Chabad on some college or some Hillel would be like vandalized
Yeah.
and they just put very ignorant stuff on there. It's insane. I mean, I feel like, but I feel like the closest we've ever got to like today, like today's anti-Semitism, I feel like the closest we've ever got like recently was right after um Kanye's statements.
Mm.
Because it's like, I mean, that was like very obviously it wasn't close to like everything that's been going on now, but it was very similar in the fact that it's like there was a large group of people being like, oh, he was right. And that was pretty troublesome. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, Actually, I remember dealing with a specific case right around then, where there was this neo-Nazi group in Florida. They originated in Northern California, which is weird because neo-Nazis in California. But they originally were in Northern California. They're called the GDL, not the JDL, the GDL, the Goyim Defense League. And they have a channel where they spit out their propaganda called Goyim TV. This is all real.
About this?
Um, and they would go table on campuses in Florida, FAU, Florida State, UF, UM, um, with signs that said Kanye was right or Hitler was right, and they would draw big swastikas, etc. And campus security eventually kicked them out because they weren't students. But I think what was unique about that was how bold they were to do it. That they felt that like there was no problem doing that because that's not their normal MO. Normally what they'll do is they'll drive through an area at like 2 in the morning and throw around flyers for people to find when they wake up. But Kanye's statement emboldened them to be there in person tabling. And they were normally they make it a point not to show their faces on camera. Here they had no problem. So yeah, they're getting bolder. They're getting more willing to be visible. They're getting louder. Absolutely.
It's like, w would you say there was something recently that you had your hands on in helping curb or prevent or anything of the sort?
So I deal with cases like every day. So here's kind of how it works. We have a few different ways that people can report anti-Semitism, and for those watching, please pay attention. You can either DM the EndJewHatred Instagram account, and somebody will get back to you, hopefully very soon. Um, we also have on our website several reporting mechanisms. That's just EndJewHatred.com. And under there, so there's really it's an application for for the fellowship, but you can also use it as a reporting mechanism if you need. You just tell us your name, what campus, and there's like an open paragraph section for you to just write whatever it is that you need. You can also feel free to reach out to me at my EndJewHatred email, which I'll say here so that we can post it.
I'll also add
It's
it in the bio.
Yehuda, yeah, Yehuda at endjewhatred.com, YEHUDA at endjewhatred.com. And I will get back to you as soon as possible. And once we've made contact, there's like a deliberative process. I'll skip the details. Basically, either it's legally actionable or it's not. And if it's legally actionable, I give you to the Lawfare Project, that is our sister organization that deals specifically with the legal stuff. It's not legally actionable. We start talking about strategy, about tablings, about rallies, about speakers, about how many people can you get to come out to an event. And most recently, well, things have been winding down in the last few weeks because finals and then the end of the semester for a lot of schools. Out in California, there's still a little bit of school left, a couple days, I think. Um, but most recent thing I handled was so there's been a running thing at University of Michigan that EndJewHatred has kind of been dealing with for a year now. And we just get more and more cases and more stuff gets brought to us. And there's a fully opened legal battle now, etc. And last week I got an email from someone who will remain nameless. She's an alumni. She's an alumnus from University of Michigan, and she told me her story of how they discriminated against her at UMich when she was there, and it was not, last year. It was a while ago. But now she feels when she saw what it like EndJewHatred's work, and she sees our fellows doing their testimonials on our Instagram, which I encourage you to go watch. It's really amazing stuff. She felt emboldened to come out and like tell us, this is what happened to me. Is there anything I can still do about it? And hopefully we'll be able to help her. I have seen stuff all the way from girls getting kicked out of sororities to people being cyberbullied to the point where they feel they need to resign their student government posts for fear of their life. Um, I've seen SJP and JVP members break into a on-campus building, a university-owned building, because there was an event that had a speaker who was an IDF soldier. They broke in. They broke windows. They broke in. They attacked people. Someone broke her hand trying to keep them out. I can't give you too many details because I don't want to out anybody, and I don't want to put them in further danger if somebody from the other side sees this and puts two and two together. But yeah, no, it's every day now. Like, I get a break because I'm the campus coordinator and most people aren't on campus during the summer. But my colleagues that deal with our local chapters or with our community outreach, it's every day for them. Like, I get 2 months of a break. They do not.
It's horrible. And I hope it gets better soon, really,
Me
because
too.
it's insane. Um, speaking on what you guys are doing, we're talking about like EndJewHatred now as an organization. You guys recently had a EndJewHatred Day, April 29th,
Mm,
right?
yes.
Um, it's like could you talk about that? Like
Yeah.
what was that? What did you guys do on that day?
Right. So EndJewHatred Day in its first iteration a few couple years ago was actually the day after Yom HaShoah that year. April 29th happened to be the day after the Yom HaShoah that year. And we used it.
For those who don't know, is a Holocaust Remembrance Day. Sorry.
Yes,
Sorry.
thank you. And we used it to kickstart this campaign where we demand from elected officials declare that day officially End Jew Hatred Day. Just like every other social movement, etc., gets their day or gets their month. And yeah, there's a Jewish Heritage Month, but it's not taken as seriously. And so we've been rolling out this campaign where we have elected officials proclaim End Jew Hatred Day, and it usually also comes with a commitment to either adopt or enforce the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. For those who don't know, IHRA stands for the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, and their definition of anti-Semitism is readily available online. It is quite it's quite good. It covers what 99% of examples that we see. And the idea there is that if we get our governments to put this in, like, to codify this in a document that they all have to vote on, sign, etc., then we will embolden a commitment from our elected officials to fight back against anti-Semitism, even if it might not be the most popular thing to do.
Mhm.
And we've had lots of success. We've had a couple of governors do this. We've had city and county legislators here in the tri-state area do it. We're working on some congressmen down in Florida. What we do is all year we work on these proclamations. And then once a year on EndJewHatred Day, we announce the updated list of people who have done it. And we're picking up speed. Like our first year, we got like some local people, mostly Jews anyway. And then our second year, we got the governor of Kentucky, which was really cool. I don't know why Kentucky, but I'm not gonna complain. Um, yeah, but basically, it's the idea of empowerment, of giving elected officials something specific to do, because you'll be surprised. A lot of elected officials actually kind of want to help out. They don't know like what to do. Just showing up at every press conference isn't going to be super helpful after a certain amount of time. Plus, they don't really have time to show up to every press conference. So we came up with this idea where, like, look, this is a proclamation that you don't like the idea that people hate Jews. Anybody who votes against this votes themselves immediately as a Jew hater. It's quick, it's simple, it should be easier than it is. But I think that it actually helps us identify who
Like who really
the
does?
enemies of who our enemies are, who is a bigot that shouldn't hold office.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's EndJewHatred Day.
it's a good tactic. Yeah, and I mean you mentioned a lot of how do you say? It's like you mentioned a lot of basically hardships in regards to like fixing life on campus for Jews everywhere. Um, but I'm actually curious. It's like have you seen any have you guys as an organization seen any successful efforts?
Yeah,
Uh,
lots of successful efforts. Okay, well, so I understand. So the first half of this thing so far has been super depressing and gloomy. So let me tell you some really encouraging stuff about what the Jewish community of the U.S. has been doing on campus. And it really, like, what I find fascinating about it is that it really morphs to the community. So, for example, in LA, we have this group of fellows who work a lot with Yavna on campus too. And what they'll do is they'll take a Yavna event like a challah bake or a women's lunch or a cholent night, and they'll insert, I don't know, 10 minutes about the history of Jewish indigeneity in Israel or the importance of fighting anti-Semitism. Real quick, not like nothing too heavy. And what it's done is that it's created this community of people who know EndJewHatred and who see that, we're being active in the spaces that they're already active. And now when we do a rally in LA, we get over 70 people without trying. Amazing. It's amazing stuff. So like we did a whole bunch of rallies in LA in response to Gigi and Bella Hadid being Gigi and Bella Hadid. this past year. And we actually protested also in New York outside IMG's office to get trying to demand that they drop them. They didn't, but we're not giving up. um, and so there's stuff like that. Then more like student government stuff related. Again, I can't give you the details here, not to out certain people.
Right.
Um, but like here in New York in the CUNY system, the community has figured out a way to play the politics and basically just keep BDS off the table. They made a backroom deal that I can't tell you about. It's not that shady. Um, and they've managed to just keep that out of the student government room, which I believe is correct. I don't think it should even be on the table, not just because I think it's anti-Semitic, but because I think it has no place in the student government. And it just doesn't have to do with anything.
Like it's just not professional,
Exactly.
basically.
And we've had people bring speakers that have had over 100 people in attendance, and we've had people lead marches down the middle of their campus. And you can scroll through the EndJewHatred Instagram and see all the stuff that we've done. And we had a great presence at the Israel Day Parade. I had a lot of fun. Um, and so EndJewHatred is growing. The Jewish community, as it always has been since Mitzrayim, since slavery in Egypt, the Jewish people have been resilient, have gotten stronger no matter how much they try and oppress us. And so there is lots of reason for hope and for looking for better things.
100%. And you brought up New York for a second. This actually reminded me. You
Mhm.
guys, um, I don't know, did you guys had a rally recently outside the New York City Department of Education. Was that on End You Hatred Day or was that
I
on?
honestly don't remember exactly what day it was. I wasn't there. I was in class. But I believe Andrew Hatred Day itself was Pesach. So I don't think it was on Andrew Hatred Day proper this year, like the day before, or the day after, something like that. Um, and basically what that was about is the Department of Education is not just okaying, but like advocating books that essentially teach children, like little kids, like these are children's books, to shun everything that came before in the rules of society because it was made by old people who don't matter and who don't understand them. And that is what they tell them being an activist is. They tell them that being an activist is basically understanding that everybody who came before you is old, outdated, and stupid, and so you don't have to respect them, and you should just come up with the rules that work for you, which is a perfect recipe to destroy any society. Uh, and a lot of that somehow because organizations like SJP get their fingers in every far left movement, uh, turns into hating Israel and supporting organizations like Hamas because it's all part of the activist package. And so they're teaching children in public schools about this stuff now. And that's what we were protesting outside
That's
City Hall.
that's actually insane. Especially because it's kind of ironic because it's like I feel like a lot of the people that support Hamas, it's like they anything that Israel posts are like, oh, it's propaganda. Whereas anything Hamas or the other side posts, they just take without a grain of salt.
You're right.
It's very ironic. It's very ironic. Um,
I um I heard once that I don't know if this is true. I haven't actually seen the study myself, but apparently there was a study done that people who consider themselves politically active, when they hear a political statement, they respond with the emotional side of their brain, like the emotional part of their brain, not the logical one. And so, including our side, by the way, everybody who's super involved in this is certifiably a little bit insane. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing. Like there's no attempt to think critically. There's no attempt to accept the possibility of another idea being true. There's just I know what I know because my favorite person on TikTok said it, and that's just the way it goes.
mhm. 100%. I mean,
And
it's, I feel like since 2008, like when Obama got his first term, that's when politics started to be a little more emotional. And then come 2016, that's when emotion and politics got like immensely tied together. Like I don't know if you saw the Shane Gillis bit where he was just like Trump was like the first guy to like basically diss people in debates.
oh yeah,
Like like before he started talking, like the debates were going as they normally went. It's like, oh, like my name is this and I'm for education, blah blah blah. And then it gets to Trump and he's like, Rand Paul is ugly. Like, and everyone's just, oh, you could do that? Like,
yeah. I mean, we can quibble over when exactly it started. Personally, I think it started a little bit earlier than 2008. But no, you're right. With the 2016 election, politics became about a cult of personality rather than policy or who's most qualified for the job. And that's how you get two candidates, neither of which I actually support, who I don't think either one is qualified for the job. I think one used to be qualified for the job. He's just really old now. I think Joe Biden 20 years ago would have been very qualified for the job. But if you forget what you were saying while it's on a prompter for you, there's a problem.
mhm.
Meanwhile, Trump, I don't think he was ever qualified to be president. I think the advisors were running the country and they did a meh job at it. And I am, as somebody who's very involved in international affairs and wants to be part of the global community, like I'm worried for a Trump presidency. Actually, I'm worried for both presidencies. They're both isolationists. They're both bad for Israel, by the way. I want to put this out there for every Jew who thinks Trump is good for Israel. What exactly has he said on aid to Israel over the last year and a half during the Republican primaries? I want you to take a close look at his statements. He's not good for Israel. He just doesn't like certain countries, and he uses Israel because it's convenient for him.
But
Uh,
then what do you say about the Abraham Accords, for example?
uh,
Stuff to help facilitate
it
during.
happened. It happened while he was in office. I don't give him the credit. It's like saying that uh, Obama was responsible for the 2008 market crash. The dude was in office for like a couple of months when it happened. Like, just because it happened while you were there doesn't mean you did anything. I think Bibi did the heavy lifting on that. I think Trump said Jared Kushner in for a lot of those negotiations. Trump wasn't there for a lot of them. Yes, Jared Kushner was acting on President Trump's orders, but I also think that Trump had a good Secretary of State. Um, and so, yeah, it happened on his watch. That's great, but I don't give him the credit. And also, we'll see how good the Abraham Accords are for Israel, because so far since October 7th, those countries haven't been much help.
Yeah. Um, all I can say is this election is about to be a very, very, very interesting one.
Yes.
Especially with everything that's going on now. Like, yeah,
You know
Trump
what?
being convicted and Biden just recently pooping himself. Um, it's all getting pretty crazy. So we'll see what happens. Hey guys, before we start, just wanted to say that this episode of the YAWP podcast is sponsored by Mudwater. Mudwater is an awesome coffee alternative that blends delicious organic ingredients such as adaptogenic mushrooms and turmeric, designed to give you a sustained energy without the jitters. Each serving of Mudwater comes with only 1/7 the amount of caffeine that comes with coffee, so you get a focused energy boost without the crash. And if you're looking to cut back on coffee, Mudwater is a great alternative that is also gluten-free, vegan, and keto friendly. So, if you're ready to upgrade your morning, feel free to use my link and try Mudwater out. You'll get 15% off any new purchase that you buy, and if you decide to subscribe and get a starter kit, you'll get $20 off along with a free frother. So go ahead, try it out, ditch coffee, drink Mudwater. Now, back to the episode. Yeah, I mean, kind of moving on. I actually read this recently. There's a historian named Franklin Foer, who basically talked about the golden age for American Jews declining.
Hmm.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, it is. I've actually been trying to tell this to people for a lot longer than people have wanted to listen. But 1920s Germany was the most liberal society in the world. It was the most accepting, progressive society. You could be whoever you wanted to be, minus a certain couple things that we have today. But by that by that time's standards, it was a very liberal and progressive society, and no one could imagine that the Weimar Republic would end up being a fascist dictatorship that killed millions. And it started with movements mostly comprised of young people. And it started with radicals. And it started on campuses and with marches through the streets. And it started with propaganda and posters. And they didn't have social media. But um, we're seeing a lot of parallels. Seeing a lot of parallels. It starts with blaming Jews for whatever problem it is. And it escalates to the Jew is what's wrong with our society. And we're seeing the same thing. They went from Israel's an apartheid state to Zionism is racism. Zionism is terrorism. And now they're saying Zionism is Nazism. That's called Holocaust inversion, by the way. And we're seeing exactly the same thing. They're just using the word Zionism instead of the word Judaism or Jews. And some of them are even bold enough to use the word Jews. Um,
I'd argue
in
a lot of
certain,
them don't know what the word Zionism means specifically.
yeah.
It
So
doesn't.
there's lots of definitions floating around out there. This is my favorite. Shout out to Charlie Korchak from Stand With Us. This is 90% her definition. I think I changed one word. But basically, the definition I like for Zionism is the belief in the right of the Jewish people to self-determine in their historic homeland. Let's break that down, right? So, if you believe in any sort of human rights system that's accepted in today's world, then you believe that any people that's considered a people has the right to self-determination. Kind of the basis of how we got countries. But if you believe that, then you believe they have the right to self-determine. Then, if you believe that the Jewish people are a people, then you have to believe that they have the right to self-determine. Now, where do they have the right to self-determine? People will tell you Uganda, Argentina, etc., all those other ideas that were thrown around in the 1800s. But it's in their historic homeland. No one can deny we were there. They have archaeological evidence going as far back as at least King David. I think they have found some that's even earlier. Like they found the city of David. The kingdom of Judea was there. No one can refute this. We were there thousands of years ago. And so to deny that definition is anti-Semitic because if you deny that the Jewish people are a people, you are either ignorant and don't know history or you're anti-Semitic. If you don't know history, I advise that you get educated or stop talking on the subject. If you don't want to learn, that's not my problem, but please don't speak on the subject. If you don't believe that Jews' historic homeland is Israel, then you're ignoring years of archaeological evidence and you are either ignorant or anti-Semitic.
100%.
Like, I'm open to the idea that not everybody who believes this stuff is actually anti-Semitic. They just don't know anything. I'm open to that, but they should get educated. Um, so yeah, so SJP and other organizations will try to tell you that Zionism is a political movement. There is a facet of Zionism called political Zionism. Theodor Herzl was the father of political Zionism, but Zionism is much older than Theodor Herzl. Ever since we were, ever since the destruction of the Second Temple and we were kicked out of Israel, we've been saying it every Pesach Seder for thousands of years.
Shana
Next year will be in Yerushalayim.
Mhm.
I mean, what you think they installed that in the 1800s? I've seen a Haggadah. I've seen the Sarajevo Haggadah. The Sarajevo Haggadah has a long history. It's hundreds of years old. In that Haggadah is written Lashon Haba B'Yerushalayim. Hundreds of years old. It survived the bombing of Sarajevo in 1995 somehow. A building fell down on top of it, and they somehow found it. I don't know. But we have hundreds of years old manuscripts that Lashon Haba B'Yerushalayim. We never gave up this hope. And anyone who tries to tell you this is ignorant is either ignorant or anti-Semitic.
100%. I kind of argue that it's like, I feel like in regards to like making peace between the two peoples that are even involved in the area, I feel like the
Mhm.
biggest thing getting in the way of that is the people who shouldn't be involved getting involved.
The West, as I like to call them.
It's like I don't because it's like I'm not anti-West now, but it's like I mean, it's just if the issues between Israelis and Palestinians, like Jews and I'll even go as far to say like I feel like the issue should just be resolved between Jews and Muslims, nobody else. I see a lot of white people getting involved. And
Okay.
it's like, I mean, yeah, sure, it's nice to have allies always. It's always great, and I can see that for them too. But the thing is, when the allies are taking it so far to the point where they're making it about them,
Mhm.
that's when a lot of ignorance happens. I feel like that's when a lot of violence happens, and it just leads to more turmoil. So I don't know. I just feel like everyone that's not involved should just shut up, go away. Like, let us handle this ourselves. Like,
I absolutely agree. Yeah, it does get ridiculous a lot of the time. I will say though that I want to make sure it's clear the Palestinians are just as indigenous. I don't believe in putting a specific date on, oh, we were here first because you were here hundreds of years ago, but we were here thousands of years ago, so it's our land and not yours. I'm like, it doesn't matter. For me, after a certain point, you're both there, you got to learn to live with each other because no one's going anywhere. There's millions of Palestinians living in Gaza and in the West Bank and in Israel itself, and they're not going anywhere. And there's millions of Jews living in Israel, and they're not going anywhere. And so, sure, we can keep clobbering each other to death if that's what makes us feel better, but that's not going to end anything. And we're going to keep talking about this for the rest of time. So I believe, I don't know, one state solution, two state solution. I don't know what the solution is, but I do believe that our two groups have to find a way to, if not live with each other, then live next to each other.
at least be
Um,
neighbors.
yeah, like
Uh,
just, I think if we could, everybody could stop exploding things,
yeah.
that would be nice.
But I mean, in regards to like the golden age for Jews declining,
Yeah,
I kind of agree and disagree because on one hand, um, my dad did come to this country like back when people were still firing Jews for Shabbat,
sure.
you know? And to get to a point now where it's like we're so accepted in a country like like not like in like maybe not today in like the people scale like there's a lot of hatred coming against us, which is
Right.
why arguably the worst time because it's like we're dealing with all that. But on the other side, like in regards to like policy for us, where it's like, we're allowed to keep Shabbat and still keep our jobs. Like it's
So
very easy for us to keep kosher, like things like that.
I hear what you're saying, but I want to say that I don't know if that's because it's better for us or because the type of anti-Semitism we experience today is different by nature, and so they don't care about that stuff. See, for the far left, they're all about freedom to be who you are. And so they wouldn't be able to do some sort of like, oh, no more Shabbat. Because, oh, what about freedom of religion,
Yeah.
right? And if they get, and they're all about making sure that everything's equitable and everybody gets the same thing. So if Muslims and Christians get off for their holidays, Jews have to get off for their holidays. Can't fire us. Or every most dining halls in America at every campus have halal food now. They don't have kosher. A lot of them don't have kosher food. A lot of them don't have kosher food. And I've sat in the meetings with these administrators and asked them, why don't you have kosher food? They said, well, it's just too expensive. We can't justify it for such a small number of students. Like, tough, do it. And
Um,
different campuses have come up with different things, but I think I don't know that I mean, there are certain things that are better. We're not getting, well, we actually are again, but we're getting lynched for different reasons than we used to. But people are getting attacked in the streets, in
yeah,
the most Jewish areas.
yeah,
In Brooklyn, people are getting attacked in the streets.
100%. Um, yeah, kind of ending off on a positive note here.
Yes.
The first question always comes from me, and the last question also always comes from me, and that's always if you had to give one piece of advice to the people watching at home, what would you say?
Get educated. Know things. It's If you're at a rally, if you're at a parade, if you're arguing with somebody at the office, if you're arguing with somebody in the classroom, if you're arguing with your professor, the first thing that's going to trip you up is that you're not sure about what you're about to say, and then you're going to do one of two things. Either you're going to pretend like you're sure, and you'll say something wrong, and they'll catch you on camera, and they'll go, "Ah ha ha! Look how stupid Jews are," or you'll back down when really you are in the right, and you let them win. And so if you're the type that's already going to be in that argument, if you're the type that wants to go out and be an activist or just wants to speak up when they see something wrong, be educated. Know what you're talking about. Check 3, 4 sources before you accept something as fact.
Mhm.
And also be educated on what the other side says. I think it's very useful to know what their response is to every one of our claims and vice versa. To know about Deadly Exchange. For those who don't know what Deadly Exchange is, the SparkNotes version is that basically it's this idea that the IDF trained U.S. police to be racist and to target people of color and to brutalize them. Or you know when they talk about the Nakba, what is the Nakba to them? And by the way, there's a narrative that can fit both Israeli Independence Day and the Nakba. Did hundreds of thousands of Palestinians no longer live in the same place the next day? Yes, that's a fact. We cannot dispute this, but you can talk about how it was war. And the Palestinians were offered, many of them, not all of them, and in the individual cases where Palestinians were forced out of their homes unjustly, absolutely those people should be condemned. But there was no sweeping order from atop the entire Israeli high command, kick everybody out of their homes. It's not what happened. It was war. Certain villages were marked as being uh, in material support of the Arab armies, and so that's what happens in war. I don't like war either. Nobody likes war. War is ugly. But to know these things, to know exactly what happened, to know the facts, to know the talking points is helpful not just to sound smart, but you'll feel better. You will feel more secure. You won't feel as scared if you know what you're talking about. And I think that's the most important thing we can do. And it's really not hard. There's lots of sources. You can go to the ADL's website, go to EndJewHatred's website, stand with us. You go to the Simon Wiesenthal Center, has some great historical stuff on just the history of the Jewish people. Read. Go out there and read. This is my best piece of advice.
So get educated, ladies and gentlemen. Yehuda, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Ed.
Before I get into the sign off, I just want to say, in the spirit of this episode and because it recently happened, to Noah Argamani, Almog Mayor John, Andre Kozlov, and Shlomo Ziv, welcome home. Welcome home. Glad you guys are safe, back with your families. And B'ezrat Hashem, God willing, um, may all the hostages be reunited with their families.
Man,
And, um, and with that, thank you so much again for coming on. If you guys like this episode, please make sure to like and subscribe. If you guys want to see what's going on with Yehuda and EndJewHatred, I'm gonna add all those links down below. If you are a Jew that's feeling unsafe on campus, and would like to figure out what you can do, I'm gonna add his email as well. If you want to see what's going on with the show, I'll have my links down below as well. And with that, this has been the You Ask Me podcast. My name is Evan Toronto, and I'll see you guys next week.
yo.
Yup.